The crisis in Europe is a very severe crisis, and it could sort of reach sort of another level if and when we see a default in Greece, whether it's an orderly or a disorderly default. A disorderly default obviously being the worst of all cases.
Sure.
That certainly for all markets around the world would mean a flight into quality. That would mean a flight of investors into German debt obligations, into US treasuries, and that would, for every market around the world, would make life a lot more difficult.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've seen yields in Italy, for instance, going over the 7% mark, whereas we know Namibia, just a couple of weeks back, raised it at around the 5.5% mark, suggesting that perhaps Namibia got it right in terms of timing.
There are definitely always opportunities, and that's always what a volatile market brings with it. There will be periods where there is a window of opportunity, and we saw Namibia issuing a $500 million bond just right after the EU summit that agreed on the bailout for Greece, and basically a week later, after President Papandreou called a referendum, and now he even sort of his government stepped down, that window of opportunity had gone again, but it was a sufficiently large window of opportunity to Namibia to get the bond out. So yes, there are opportunities, but capital market issuers, they have to be ready. They have to be ready to act if and when that window of opportunity opens up.
Yeah, so how do African issuers then play it right to ensure that they get that window of opportunity right? Because as you alluded to, it's a question of timing.
I mean, one thing obviously is Namibia, again to stay with this example,
sure.
They had their credit ratings. They had mandated months ago their lead managers. They had done roadshows. They had the documentation right. So it was all about sort of pushing a button and getting the deal out.
With this environment, are we seeing African issuers looking at Europe, looking at markets outside of Africa to try and raise money?
We will see probably a mix. I mean, obviously you have a number of African markets, South Africa being obviously having a very deep liquid market, yeah. Where the JSE, for instance, even is keen on attracting inward listings from African issuers or other issuers into the South African market, which will have a liquidity impact, which is a different story. But then you have, obviously, you have some major markets in Sub-Saharan Africa. You take Nigeria, you take Kenya, where you have proper capital markets where you can issue long-term debt.
Right.
But again, now in Nigeria, for instance, where the banking crisis that had sort of kept us all quite busy over the last 2 years, yeah. Has evidently come to an end now, and we will see in the month to come, we will see probably Nigerian issuers and other African issuers trying to tap global markets, yeah. Again, if and when the time is right.
And the appetite for African debt from investors out in the West or in the other parts of the globe, how strong is that?
I think what you notice at the moment, or what we notice at the moment, when we speak to investors, yeah. Global investors in the US, in Europe, they all are getting their Africa allocation now. Sometimes right. It's say 250 million, 500 million, but it's a new phenomenon. Most of the big asset management firms now have their dedicated Africa allocation. So there is money, there is dedicated money for investing in Africa.
And the pricing that we've been seeing, we're talking now in South Africa, for instance, of real yields around 2 percentage points.
I think these are, under circumstances, still you have to see it in the global context.
But relatively comfortable, you would say.
They're comfortable, they are yeah, relatively acceptable yields.
Yeah, and the outlook for issuers then from Africa, from where you stand, and I'm talking really Pan-African here, from here in South Africa, where the developed market is, to the other parts of Africa, like Nigeria, like Kenya, for instance. The outlook for those markets, for issuing debt, how healthy is it?
I think I would be sort of cautiously optimistic about the outlook for these markets and issuance in these markets. In a number of these countries, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Kenya, You have some very large corporates that have very strong balance sheets that can obviously be very interesting candidates to issue into these markets or even go globally and would find a global audience for the issue.